Welcome to another professional conversation, High Point Friend School. I, of course, am Terry Watkins, your host, and I appreciate you being here to tune in to learn a little bit more about different professions that are available for you and your student. Today, we have the executive director of our nonprofit and governing board for the school, Drew Smith. Drew, thanks for being with us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Drew, what does being an executive director entail?
That's an excellent question. It seems mysterious to people when you use that job title to describe what it is that you do. It's a combination of things. And I think the simple way to think about it is, on the one hand, I'm a manager of an organization. So I work with a variety of people on my staff and my board to make sure things are paid for. So managing the budget, I do hiring of staff. So managing people and making sure that they're doing the work effectively for our organization. And I think the other part of the job is sort of like a figurehead, chief spokesman, cheerleader. So I do writing to talk a lot about Quaker education, because that's what our nonprofit focuses upon. I give interviews like this. I take opportunities in public to talk about Quaker education. And part of my job in that vein is to also think ahead. What are the things that Quaker schools should be focusing upon, working upon, building enthusiasm for future plans? So that's what an executive director does from my point of view.
Wow, that's a lot of hats. Sounds like you're herding a lot of cats too.
Indeed, there are a lot of cats to herd. And in this case, because we're a member organization, meaning we have 77 individual schools that are members, there are an awful lot of cats.
77 schools, that's a lot of schools for sure. So at what point in your life did you realize that you love working with people, their relationships with education and nonprofits? Because I feel like that's kind of central to being an executive director, especially for Quaker education.
Well, I had a unique opportunity when I was 14, and the opportunity was to be a tour guide at a museum. The museum was in Maine. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, so it was away from home, and it was a Shaker museum. Shakers are a religious community there were at one time there were 19 of these places in the United States, mostly in New England, and by the time I took this job, there were just two. So I spent my summers giving tours and also living in this Shaker community up in Maine, and did that for 15 different summers. So through high school, college, and then when I initially started teaching. And I really liked teaching people about Shakers, and people would tour the museum. Shaker furniture was something that was popular at the time. People collected it, that sort of thing, but they didn't know a whole lot about Shakers. And I realized I really enjoyed interacting with people in that way and teaching them something new. So I feel lucky that when I was a kid, this job I kind of just took as an interesting adventure. Turned out to be a training ground and proving ground for me that I actually liked doing teaching, that I liked working with people, I liked answering their questions, and I liked sharing what I knew about this unique and unusual group of people.
Yeah, that was definitely a blessing to have that kind of experience so early in your development and in your schooling, so that you could really start to shape and focus in on that passion.
When I took the job, again, I was 14. So, I had in my head that I was going to be a lawyer. I had just taken a civics class in 8th grade, the year prior to that summer. And that was what was in my head. And slowly but surely over the course of the first few summers, I realized, maybe teaching is what I ought to do. I really enjoy doing this work. So, yeah, I feel lucky.
Very cool. Yeah, that definitely would have taken you down an entirely different career path for sure. Full of excellent opportunities as well, but definitely different.
Yes, that's for sure.
So what made you decide to come be an executive director for Quaker schools as opposed to being an executive director for another nonprofit? Because there's so many nonprofits out there.
Mhm. Well, this is probably the boring part of the story. So when I was in fourth grade, my parents decided to change churches, and we went from a Presbyterian church to the Quaker church, and that's where I started. I can't say that I was interested in being a Quaker, but my parents certainly were, and that's where the influence of Quakerism started for me. I ended up attending a Quaker boarding school for 11th and 12th grade. It was my idea. My parents didn't make me go. After college, thinking about, knowing that I wanted to teach, I realized that, because of my experience in Quaker school, I thought, well, this is a place that I could get started and feel comfortable with. So I applied to a variety of schools, Quaker schools and non-Quaker schools, but I got more interviews at Quaker schools and ended up landing a job at a place called Friends School, Mullica Hill. It's in New Jersey, about 20 miles southeast of Philadelphia. And I was the eighth grade civics teacher. If you'll recall, that's where my interest in the law started. And I really enjoyed it and ended up staying there for 24 years as a teacher and then an administrator at different levels, eventually becoming the head of the school. So to say that I really dove into Quaker education would be an understatement. And so that, it seemed like the right place to me the entire time I was there. And, I felt like I was continuing to learn and grow professionally. And I also developed my expertise in Quaker education. So that's really that's really the path that ultimately led me here. I took a brief detour and ran a charter school in the city of Philadelphia for 5 years. And Friends Council was looking for a new executive director. I didn't actively apply for it. They reached out to me because they knew I was a Quaker and had been the head of a Quaker school, which were two of their qualifications. And I really went for the interview just because I thought, well, this will be interesting. I'm curious to hear what they had to say. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, hey, maybe I did have an awful lot to share with teachers and administrators and trustees about Quaker education. I'd never really thought about it that way before, but the opportunity to teach mostly the adults in schools about Quakerism and how it works in our schools, because there are very few Quakers in the world. We're a very small group of people, so it's important that schools have the ability to learn from people who know or have some experience, and also people who are in a position to welcome folks into Friends education and to help them realize that Friends education, Quaker education, is even more powerful when we invite everyone in to participate with us in this. So the interview made me, caused me to be very interested, and I was pleased that I was a finalist and eventually hired for the job. And again, I have really enjoyed, in the same way that I enjoyed giving tours at the Shaker Village, I've really appreciated and loved the opportunity to teach people who might not know a whole lot about something that they're entering into, and help them feel both welcome and help them build their knowledge so that they feel successful on their jobs.
So that's really amazing. That's actually what brought you down from Philadelphia here to the Winston-Salem High Point area.
Yeah. So this takes the interview to a different direction, but just basically Quakers started in this country in Philadelphia before it was even a country. And eventually Quakers made their way to different parts of the United States. And North Carolina, actually, other than Philadelphia, North Carolina is a hotbed of Quakers and Quakerism. In the Philadelphia area, there are 40 schools, Quaker schools. North Carolina's got 5, and it's although that seems like a big difference, the area where High Point is there are 3: Greensboro, Durham, Raleigh-Durham, and High Point. So it's a place that's important to us in Friends Council, and absolutely every opportunity I get to travel to North Carolina and work in person with the schools there, I like to take it.
That's amazing. Well, very cool. Thanks for sharing that with us and letting us know. Sometimes it's not about who you know, it's about the work that you've done. You build a reputation for yourself over time. And I thought that was really brilliant that you touched in on that in talking about your kind of adventure to becoming the executive director now for the school, which is amazing. Okay, Drew. So if you were to inspire a young person, say somebody in middle school who's felt the calling to be involved in this industry, what might you tell them they should do?
That's an interesting question because if I think about the story I just told about myself, the first place I realized I maybe teaching was for me was because I took a chance on a job as a 14-year-old that was a job all about teaching, but I didn't really think about it that way at the time. And if I think about all the things that have helped me be a better teacher, in a lot of ways, it's all the things I tried out while I was a kid. So I play a musical instrument, the saxophone, and I have to admit my parents were the ones who made me take music lessons. But I'm really glad now I didn't resist because, all the way through college, I played in bands and music groups and formed great friendships. And I just loved working with groups of people playing music. I played sports as a kid, and it's sort of the same thing. What I really loved about it was being with my teammates and working together to accomplish something together. I had friends who twisted my arm as a kid. Come on, be in the play with us. You don't have to be one of the people out front. You can just, sing in the chorus or be one of the bystanders in the background. And I really appreciated the experience. Not necessarily being on stage, but working with groups of people, my peers, on things. And all of those things make me think about teaching in a classroom. It's working together with groups of people to try to accomplish something together or to work together on an interesting project. And again, if I hadn't tried all those experiences, I just wonder whether or not I would have ended up here and again, doing what I really love to do. So I think my number one recommendation would be if you have an opportunity to try something that maybe you're not sure about, just go for it. Try it out. See if it's something that maybe you'll keep on your list forever, or maybe it's something you'll say, well, I'm glad I tried that, but this isn't really for me. And the only way you know is if you do. So I strongly encourage middle school kids to try everything you can while you're young.
It's such a good tip. And it's one that we've heard a couple of times from other professionals that we've had in our series about really taking this opportunity to leverage the time you have to explore and discover and play, and really don't be afraid to try something. If it's something that scares you, try it, because it might be leading you into something really amazing. And if it's something that you don't really enjoy, that's okay too. At least you gave it a try and you knocked something off of the potential list as well.
Yeah, well, that's how I had this job. I mean, I didn't actively seek it out, but took a chance on the interview and realized two things. One, that I had relevant experience. So I wasn't necessarily, going into a job where I didn't sort of know what to do, but it was also full of, unknowns and a little bit of adventure. And that was the intriguing part. It was going to be trying something new that I thought I'd be interested in doing. And I'm really glad now I took the chance.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm glad you took the chance too. So, Drew, here's the next question that I have for you. Was there any particular schooling or education that you needed to receive in order to be an executive director at this level? And if so, can you share with us a little bit about what that looked like?
Most jobs like this do require that you have a college degree. In my experience, talking to other people who do jobs like this, it doesn't necessarily have to be a degree in a particular thing. It could be in history, it could be in biology, it could be in psychology, it could be in social work, it could be in physics. What's really important, I think, for employers, people who hire executive directors, is that you had a broad-based kind of liberal arts experience in college. So just like the way I answered the questions about trying things out when you were a kid, having a bachelor's degree usually means that you've read interesting books, that you've probably taken some classes you didn't expect that you'd take, and you learned things that you didn't expect to learn. So having a degree like that's really important. It helps you later in life with encountering questions that you didn't anticipate and feeling like you do have enough confidence in yourself to answer them. I also have a master's degree, and that's not always required for a job like this. My particular degree was in educational leadership because at the time that I was in graduate school, I was a middle school principal, and that felt very relevant. What was great about it was a lot of it was about thinking about yourself and thinking about organizations. So I feel like I learned an awful lot about both of those things, both myself and the way different people, thinkers throughout history, have thought about, what are the dynamics that operate between and amongst people and organizations. And it really opened my eyes to the way I needed to continue to develop myself professionally. So that's the last degree that I have, that master's degree. But I've continued to develop myself professionally by reading books or taking courses, and a lot of which have to do with organizations and the dynamics within organizations. So again, I think the more important degree in a lot of ways is the bachelor's degree, broad-based, that gets you in the door. And then as you do your work, I took some time between my degrees to work, and that helped me really refine my interest in what I do in graduate school. So that's my path, and it worked for me. And I know I have a similar path to others who do jobs like mine.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that detail. It's really important to know kind of what our middle schoolers are setting themselves up for. So if you have an interest in being organized, being involved, having an impact in future generations through the teachers directly, this might be a career path for you. And so now you have a general idea of exactly how much schooling is involved in order to give yourself not just the credentials that you need for this kind of role, but the right mindset and the right resources inside of your own toolbox to be effective at this role as well.
And I'd add that there was a really important break that I took in between one degree and the next degree. And I spent time in that period of time really figuring out what it is I wanted to do. So I would encourage middle school kids who are thinking ahead. All of this doesn't happen at once, and that's okay. So right now you're going through school as a middle schooler, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Once you get after 12, there can be periods of time when you take breaks to have experiences outside of the classroom. So if the amount of time in school seems daunting, remember, as you think about it, you can take breaks in between and work and have experiences that give you a little break from the classroom, but also help focus yourself in on what it is you might want to do in the
Exactly. And those breaks are super important. So make sure you tap into those for sure. What's been your favorite part about this chosen career path, Drew? Because it sounds like you have quite a passion for this. You've been involved in it for a long time. There's got to be a couple of things that really keep you excited about the work that you're doing.
Well, if I focus in on the executive director part, one of the things that I've loved about it is unlike my previous positions where I was at a school, and that's where I did my work every day. This job has allowed me to get to know people in all parts of the country and, in fact, the world. So I I spend a lot of time every month traveling to different schools, and have gotten to know places that I wouldn't have gotten to know otherwise. So High Point, North Carolina, for instance, or Ramallah in the West Bank, in Israel, Palestine, where there is a Friends school. So I've engaged in all sorts of adventurous travel, but also when I get there, I've been able to share what I know with people about Quaker education or what we do in our office. I think the second thing is I've gotten to an age where it's starting to feel like a lot of what I do is giving back. So, I had people who taught me things about Quaker education, about teaching and learning, that I didn't know when I was in my 20s and 30s. And, now that I'm this far into my career, I'm 30 plus years into a career, I feel like I'm in a position to give back. So I've really appreciated the chance to give back to, teachers and administrators and trustees, give back some of the wisdom imparted to me by all of my mentors and elders along the way. So I think the combination of the adventure of travel and getting to know new places, but also feeling really gratified to give back are the two things that I would highlight about what I really appreciate about my position now.
I love that because you tapped into one of our core values as Quaker education, and that's stewardship and being able to steward in others through what you've learned. Those experiences are not ours alone. They're ours for the purpose of helping others. And so I think that's beautiful that you've been really able to feel fulfilled in doing that, and not just having the impact that you're having in our communities and in our schools and in our future generations, but also being able to know that your education, the things that you've learned, the things that you've discovered along the way have not just been for you in those adventures, while very cool, they've also been able to help inspire and shape others.
I'm lucky.
Yes, very much. So I have one more question for you, Drew. If you were to go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice that would have made your journey a little bit easier in this career path, what would that be and why?
Well, I will go back to the gap in time between my bachelor's degree and the master's work. And I would have said to my younger self, you're kind of putting this off a little bit longer than you might have. Because the way that I did my graduate work was I took one class at a time. And it turned out to be, the classes, that is, way more interesting than I thought it would have been. And I really would have benefited not waiting 10 years, but maybe 5 years in between my one degree and my next, the pathway to my next degree. Because I think my teaching and the administrating that I was doing would have really benefited from that. But at the time, I really gave in to my inertia and skepticism rather than thinking that a new adventure would open my eyes to something new. That would be my piece of advice.
Interesting. So stay curious.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let yourself get too stuck in the mundane or the routine. And definitely noticing that you kind of were holding yourself back from the true potential that you had to yet uncover and discover for yourself. Very good.
That's absolutely it. Absolutely it.
Yay. Well, thank you, Drew, so much for the wisdom, the information, sharing your story here with not just our students, but our teachers and our family members as well. So we appreciate that. If our students have an additional question, is there a good way for them to get in touch with you? Because I know we don't have a whole lot of time together, and there's probably other questions that I didn't ask. So is there maybe some contact information they can reach out to you by?
Sure. The easiest way right now, given the way we're all working, is to reach me via email. And my email is very simple. It's my first name, Drew, at Friends Council, all one word, friendscouncil.org. The second part of that also happens to be the address of our website. So feel free to go and potentially have questions answered there if you have questions about Quaker schools. But Drew at Friends Council. Happy to answer questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. For those of you that are watching, if you're not yet a member of High Point Friends School, but you want to see what Quaker education can do for you, your family, and your child, feel free to reach out to us. The contact information for High Point Friends School is down below in the banner. You can reach out to Pam Horn and get a tour of our campus and come see what High Point Friends School is all about. We would love to have you and welcome you and your student into our community. Until next time, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a terrific week.